welcome everybody, and thank you so much for coming today. Claranne and Aaron and I want to thank you all for coming and celebrating Katie's life. Special thanks to Ted and Lauren and Todd and Linda and everyone who's shown the love and support that we've needed so desperately at this time. I loved Katie my entire life. I told her we would never say goodbye. For as long as I am, and for as long as Aaron and Claranne are, so is she in our hearts and in our minds. I pray you all know Katie well enough to know her compassion, her strength, her love, and that you can hold a place in your hearts and your minds for her forever. Thank you.
Hi, most of you know my name. I'm Ted Rhodes, and I've been asked by Matt and the family to introduce the rest of the speakers this evening. I do want to ask you, if you have a cell phone, to please silence it, or you can give it to me because I lost mine earlier. I have found it again, but also, can you hear in the back? Is this a good volume? Good. All right. Well, we gather here to grieve a great loss, but also to celebrate an extraordinary life cut short, but lived to the fullest. Actually, I have to raise this up. I need big font type here. There we go. Our first speaker this evening to share a few of her own stories and reminiscences about Katie will be Lauren, Katie's closest friend. Katie and Lauren knew each other during their undergraduate years at Scripps, but they really got to know each other out here at UCSB at graduate school. Lauren shares with Katie a great love of history, literature, and classical music. Todd Jarrett, to my right here, Lauren's boyfriend back then and soon-to-be husband, became fast friends with Matt over the years. Both Lauren and Todd have helped Katie, Matt, and the family immensely to get through all they have faced these past many months. And both Lauren and Todd have helped with organizing today's celebration. Lauren?
All right, so I have folks in the back who are going to wave at me if I'm not loud enough. All right, I'm here to regale you with tales of Katie. Katie and I first met at Scripps College as freshmen. We were fellow residents at Toll Hall, one of the oldest and most beautiful dorms on campus. While we shared the same academic advisor, Professor Brad Blaine, who is here with us today, my first shared experience with Katie was during our senior year, when we both took Latin at 8 a.m., 5 days a week. Over 20 people began the course with us. Before the end of the first semester, only 4 of us remained. If that's not a bonding experience, I'm not sure what is. Katie and I next met up in graduate school. In fact, it was 30 years ago this month that I moved from Los Angeles to Carpinteria to work on my degree in medieval history at UCSB. Katie had already beat me to the program by 5 years, but she was the first student to welcome me and to insist that we drive to campus every morning at 6 a.m. so we could work on the Doomsday Book project, an undertaking which involved computerizing census data from William the Conqueror's 1086 survey of England. As our friendship grew and solidified, so too did that of our husbands, Matt and Todd, as Ted just mentioned, who were not only often thrown into each other's way, but also discovered that they had much in common. Meanwhile, as our lives became increasingly interwoven, we got to know each other's families and friends. In truth, I know and have become friends with many of you who are here today because I met you through Katie. Katie's and my friendship deepened further as we raised our children together. First Aaron and my daughter Alyssa, then Claranne and my son Jamie. and as we continued to share our lives, our enthusiasms, and our hardships, including her final one. To celebrate Katie's life and our friendship, I'd like to offer a few snapshots of what I loved, still love, and will miss about Katie. I loved and will miss Katie's ability to turn the most mundane activities into art projects and festive celebrations. I can't lift this, so you'll have to come look at it afterwards. Take my word for it. It's a board for the much-loved family game they call Cornhole. Rather than the Scripps motto on it, Katie designed this, and it's got the Scripps motto is Incipit Vita Nova, which means the new life begins. Katie's written Incipit Vita Frumenti Foraminus, which means roughly the life of cornhole begins. So come check it out afterwards. Or her bringing several bags of wine, cheese, and crackers for Claire Ann and Jamie's annual 4-hour Miss Julie Marathon dance rehearsals. Or our celebration at Cedars last May, complete with champagne flutes and flowers to mark a triumphant family gathering when Aaron came home. I loved and will miss Katie's ability to remember lots and lots of details about history, people, current events, and local issues. I always counted on her to keep me abreast of matters involving the Carpinteria City Council, the Bluffs, the local schools, Santa Barbara Middle School, and even the Friends of the Carpinteria Library, the last organization with which she became involved. In fact, I was surprised how many times I wanted to double-check facts and names with her while I was writing this talk. I loved and will miss our championship of the much maligned and misunderstood, but emotionally moving Middle Ages. Like the women depicted in Beowulf, who may look like barmaids, but who played important diplomatic roles in their society. Or the common but mistaken belief that medieval people thought the world was flat, when educated people of the time knew that it was round. Or our preference for medieval art rather than Renaissance art. Or the beauty of the striking and sorrowful imagery in Anglo-Saxon poetry. I loved and will miss our outings together. To see classical concerts like Hilary Hahn at Disney Hall, or the Pacific Chorale for their Christmas concerts in which my own folks sang. To visit history museums, like our trip to Washington, D.C. in 2012 to see the newly discovered Staffordshire Hoard. And our annual visits on her birthday to the Getty Villa to see beloved ancient Roman and Greek artifacts. To travel with our two families, like our trip to Cabo San Lucas in 1988, when Matt and Todd fished tuna and Katie and I watched hundreds of leaping dolphins. Or our trip to the San Juan Islands in 2002, when we chartered 2 boats and spent evenings with the 4 kids in one boat and the 4 adults in the other boat. I love and will miss our experiences with our kids, like driving to the Thousand Oaks Mall right after Alyssa was born, as Katie said, to get me out of the house, and supplying our kids with children's literature. Sometimes we were as excited about the books as the kids, perhaps even more so. Did we go to the midnight release of the 6th Harry Potter for them or for us? And driving to Fillmore to buy fireworks, and driving to Target, and driving to Santa Barbara for whatever it was. I loved and will miss birthdays with Katie, like her hysterical birthday cards, which I know many of you have received, as well as the gifts she gave me, which were always meaningful and often delivered months after my birthday. I love and will miss holidays with Katie's family, our family, the Greg, Francine, and Will Graves family, and all other parents, family members, or friends who joined us on any of these occasions. Like Halloween at the Graves with Katie and Francine vying to stockpile the most ghoulish decorations possible. I mean, we're talking crates here. And pre-Christmas dinner at our house with our singing of Christmas carols from this collection, which Katie compiled, copied, and constructed for each one of us. And Easter at Katie's with egg hunts for our kids, held long past the age appropriate for egg hunts. I loved and will miss Sunday dinners with Katie, with or without the kids, with or without our parents, or with or without family friends, but always with each other. I loved and will miss Friday afternoons with Katie, when she and I drank wine, ate cheese, and talked about all of the above and more. I'll also miss all of the things I've wanted and will want to discuss with her since she's left us. So this wouldn't be complete if I didn't dive into some Anglo-Saxon poetry, so here we go. The two excerpts I've chosen are from Beowulf, and I'd like to read them to honor Katie's life. But first, this one I can lift. This is a Beowulf shirt. Katie gave it to me. It says Beowulf because Chaucer is too easy. Katie, of course, had a similar shirt, but the phrase is written in old, not modern English. Okay, here's the first excerpt. This is from the end of Beowulf. It's from the Seamus Heaney translation. It was hard then on the young hero, having to watch Beowulf, whom he held so dear, there on the ground, going through his death agony. The dragon from under earth, his nightmarish destroyer, lay destroyed as well, utterly without life. He fell to earth through the battle strength in Beowulf's arm. There were few indeed, as far as I have heard, big and brave as they may have been, few who would have held out if they had had to face the outpourings of that poison breather. We must hurry now to take a last look at the king and launch him, lord and lavisher of rings, on his way. Then 12 warriors rode round in his honor, all of them distraught, chanting in dirges, mourning his loss. They extolled his heroic nature and exploits and gave thanks for his greatness, which was the proper thing. For a man should praise a prince whom he holds dear and cherish his memory when that moment comes, when he has to be conveyed from his bodily home. So the Geat people, his hearth companions, sorrowed for the lord who had been laid low. They said that of all the kings upon the earth, he was the most gracious and fair-minded, the kindest to his kin and to his people. The second excerpt leaves us with an image of Katie's generous companionship. Then Walktheow came in, Hrothgar's queen, observing the courtesies. Adorned in her gold, she graciously saluted the men in the hall, then handed the cup first to Hrothgar, their homeland's guardian, urging him to drink deep and enjoy, because he was dear to them. So the helming woman went on her rounds, queenly and dignified, decked out in rings, offering the goblet to all ranks, treating the household and the assembled troops. With measured words, she welcomed us all. Thank you.
We have some seats up here, so please come in and fill in a little bit here. I see 3 or 4 or 5, 6, 8, 10 seats. Our next speaker, Mary, is Matt's sister. Katie was close to both Mary and Matt's sister Glenn, as well, of course, to Matt's mother Claire. They all shared the experience of having gone to Scripps. And by the way, you guys, I learned a little firsthand about how Katie could delve into Scripps lore when she found out that not only my mother, but a couple of aunts went to Scripps, and then she learned that my uncle was on the board, and then she learned that my father had been president of the board of trustees. And she went back and she looked at her diploma, and she had met my father up here, helped us with the Bluffs fundraising. She went back and looked at her diploma, and my father had signed her diploma. So that was brings me back around into this theme of Scripps here. Mary?
Good afternoon. My vocal here. Thank you. I'm just going to read a brief poem that brings Katie to mind. I think I won't be able to read this. Okay. I'm standing upon the seashore, which in fact I guess I actually am. A ship at my side, spreads her white sails to the moving breeze and starts for the blue ocean. She is an object of beauty and strength. I stand and watch her until at length she hangs like a speck of white cloud just where the sea and the sky come to mingle with each other. Then someone at my side says, "There, she's gone." Gone where? Gone from my sight, that is all. She is just as large in mast and hull and spar as she was when she left my side. And she's just as able to bear her load of living freight to her destined port. Her diminished size is in me, not in her. And just at that moment when someone says, "There, she is gone," there are other eyes watching her coming and other voices ready to take up glad shout, "Here she comes." And when she arrives at that new shore, the children will all have sandcastle birthday cakes. There will be unsurpassed table settings, and there'll be laughter all around. Because besides being a beautiful, intelligent, and stoic woman, our Katie loved to play. We love you, Katie.
Our next speaker is Katie's nephew, Justin, Mary's son. Katie loved Justin and all her nieces and nephews with the same gregariousness that she showed her friends. Justin?
We're remembering Katie today in a lot of different ways. An incredible wife to my Uncle Matt, an amazing mother to my cousins Aaron and Claire Ann, great friend, teacher, colleague, to many of you out here with us today. But to me, I remember her as Aunt Katie, and Aunt Katie was pretty great. It's fitting that we're having this memorial service here today on this beach because of my 35 years of memories and time spent with Katie. Nearly all of them happened right there under that palapa and inside of that beach house. Growing up as kids, Uncle Matt and Aunt Katie, they were the fun, the cool aunt and uncle. The ones who didn't have kids yet, who would run around and play with you and chase you and joke around, almost more like they were older brothers and sisters than they were aunts and uncles. And that was Aunt Katie and Uncle Matt for me and my cousins as we were growing up. One of the things our family always did when we came down here, there was a night where the parents would go out and go off into town and go out to dinner, and all of the cousins, as we were referred to, got to stay home and either here at the beach house or up at Matt and Katie's house and hang out with Uncle Matt and Aunt Katie all night. And those nights were honestly some of the highlights of our trip down to the beach every year. We had so much fun playing with them, being with them. They were just such great people to be with, and it was amazing. But Katie was a lot more than just a fun aunt. She was a great friend and role model. She was an amazing cook. Made the best guacamole you'd ever had. It was a pretty regular occurrence for us down at the beach house for Aunt Katie to come by in the afternoon with a couple of bags from Trader Joe's, a big mixing bowl, a cookbook, and a couple of crazy kitchen appliances she had brought down from her house, and just announced that she was going to make a gourmet meal. And sure enough, within a couple of hours, we were sitting down to some of the best food you'd ever had. Compliments of Chef Katie. As great as the chef that she was, though, it was kind of funny to witness her ongoing battles with Erin and Claire Ann about getting them to eat their dinners. And they were pretty epic at times. Between having me and some of my other cousins have to hide the ice cream and cookies from Erin and Claire Ann so they wouldn't get to them before dinner, to one of my favorite memories was when Katie was saying that Claire Ann was having going through a phase where she was only eating Taco Bell. And so Katie, to address this problem in classic fashion, drove down to Taco Bell and convinced the manager there to give her a package of Taco Bell wrappers so that she could take the food, wrap it up in Taco Bell paper, and try to get Claire Ann to eat it. And that was Katie to a T, you know. She wasn't, you know, she was going to get it done whatever, however she could. Katie was funny. She had a quick wit to her. She could tell great stories and finish them with great punchlines. She was just a lot of fun to talk to listen to. She had great stories. She loved British humor, which, you know, isn't for some people, but she turned me on to Monty Python, and some of those movies are still my favorite movies today. And most of all at heart, Katie was a teacher. I have many, many memories of Katie sitting down with me and asking me about what I was learning in school, you know, what subjects I was taking, what classes I was taking, how I was doing. And she was always very interested in how, not only what I was taking, but how I was being taught, asking me, well, did the professor explain to you about this event that occurred, and are they having you read this book, and if not, why not? You need to be asking this professor why they aren't telling you about this or having you read this. And of course I'm saying, well, okay, I don't know, but there's no way I'm going to go, you know, tell my teacher he's not doing a very good job. But of course Katie was evaluating him from, you know, thousands of miles away, sight unseen, and it was great. Katie actually even had a role in where I ended up going to college. When I was in high school finishing up and it came time to start looking at colleges, she offered to kind of drive me around to some of the local campuses here in Carpinteria, Santa Barbara area. And so we did, and we went to, you know, UCSB and some of the other schools, and I remember thinking, as probably most kids do, wow, UCSB, college on the beach, I'm in. So I came home and told my parents, hey, I think, you know, UCSB, that might be the place I want to go. And they, of course, immediately objected, no, that's, you know, that's a party school, you're not going there. So thinking I could outsmart them, knowing that Katie had gone there and was still associated with the school in some ways, I said, all right, well, let's go talk to Aunt Katie. And if she says that it would be okay, then maybe we can at least kind of keep the school in consideration. My parents agreed, and I thought I had pulled off a coup. Like, there's no way, you know, she's not going to go for this. It's her alma mater, you know, da-da-da-da-da. And so we walked up to Aunt Katie, and I said, hey, Aunt Katie, don't you think it would be a great place for me to go to UCSB? And without missing a beat, just immediately, she looked at me and said, no, that's a terrible idea. Why would you ever go there? I'd never let you go there. And so my dreams of, you know, attending college on the coast were crushed, but it turned out all right, and it was probably all for the better. I think the point of all these stories, and I could go on, as I'm sure we all could for hours, is that Katie just impacted us all in so many ways. She was just such an amazing person and had a beautiful spirit to her that if you knew her, it touched you. And this has been the first time I've been down here without her. And it's been hard. It's been a little different. But hearing all of these stories, thinking of them, thinking of Aunt Katie sitting under that palapa, the big floppy hat that she always wore, carrying a book, sitting in the sand with her feet buried in the sand, and talking to her about local politics what's going on with the city council or what the latest issue of the day is down here, and marveling at her ability to tie in medieval European history to any and every event. It brings a smile to my face and it warms my heart, and it reminds me that, well, while she may not be here, she hasn't really ever left. And I love you, Aunt Katie.
We will next hear from Mary Bestien, who has known Katie longer than any of our other speakers tonight. She and Katie were friends and have been friends since their childhood days in the La Cañada Flint Ridge area, where they met in elementary school. Come on. You want this down a little bit?
No, it's perfect. Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everybody. As I was introduced, I was Mary Sullivan when Katie knew me, and I'm Mary Bestien now. And Katie and I first met at Palmcrest Elementary School. I was in 4th grade in her class, and I had this awareness of her presence. All the girls were twittering about this boy named John Moore who had a crush on Katie, and I thought, this is a woman I can learn a lot from. And I finally found out who she was, and I figured out, well, of course, everybody has a crush on Katie, and I'm sure that's why we are all here today. And I got to know her, and she was just the best sidekick to have to explore the world and learn all about the exciting things available in life. And we especially bonded when I found out she was a Dark Shadows fan, as I was. And I am going back to 4th grade, and I brought some music. I play flute. Let me get it out for a second. I play a lot of weddings, a lot of more professional gigs, but today I'm going to play like a 5th grader. So, Dark Shadows featured vampires and a lot of spooky stuff. And we would run home after school every day and turn on the TV, and it would start like this. And that was enough to really get us intrigued in this whole soap opera for 4th graders and 5th graders. And then we had to call each other right off afterwards and talk about every single thing we happened in the series. Friday was unbearable for us because there was always a cliffhanger at Dark Shadows. And of course we discussed it, and we always wondered what would happen next. But it was awful for us because we were separated for 2 whole days. But we invented something that came along like maybe 30 years later. People call it texting. But we wrote little notes to each other, and we put them in bags, and then as soon as Monday came, we would shove our bags to each other, and we would get all of our little text messages. 5th grade came along, and I think we were even in the same class, and we got to do dancing. We were 2 quirky girls, and while all the other kids were learning all the songs to the Monkees, we developed a crush on the only man teacher, and he taught us a dance called You Butterfly. And it was sung by Andy Williams, and of course Katie was delighted to find out my parents had the album. They had 3 albums in the house, and they had Andy Williams' You Butterfly. So we would dress up, and we did the butterfly dance for my parents a billion times. And I don't know if you remember this song, but it's very catchy. Much better than those Monkees, we thought. Just a sec. And we just thought that was a hoot. But then we were exposed to Beethoven, and that just started our whole love of classical music. And we learned a song, a whole symphony we thought, by Beethoven, and it was his 9th. everybody in the school district performed it all together. And it started a love affair for both of us, for music, for classical music, and we played the Ode to Joy. You may have heard that one. Sixth grade came along, and we became very accomplished on our respective instruments. Katie played the violin, I played the flute, and I had one book in my whole library, and it was called, can you believe it? Joyful Christmas, Easy Flute and Violin Duets. We played it all year long, but our favorite was Star of the East because we didn't think it had anything to do with Christmas, and we performed it at the school variety show at the end of sixth grade. Of course, we were upstaged because the piano fell on a boy, broke his leg before we went on. But then we got to play after they wheeled him off, and we played Star of the East. Glad I took the flute up. We love that song, and we got really good at it. Well, then we were in middle school, and we were in a history class together. We had this strange lady named Mrs. Dark. She adored Katie because Katie made a poster of this gigantic nose. I don't know how Katie even knew about this, and it said, "Nose out the Normans." I pretended I knew what she was talking about. I had no idea. But she got a lot of, accolades from Mrs. Dark, and I was really proud of her, but I still don't know anything about that. But ask Lauren. William the Conqueror may have had something to do with that. I don't know. Let's see, that brings us to middle school. Well, don't worry, I'm almost done. I won't tell you about every day. But anyway, I do remember in middle school, we landed on the moon. Not Katie and me, but we were together that evening. And I remember we watched it on TV, and then we went out on my balcony, and we looked up at the moon and just marveled at just the miraculous things about all of life and everything. And we really thought we saw those astronauts up on that moon. And I just remember that moment so much. Let's see. Well, high school came, and we joined the band. Katie played the violin, so she couldn't be in the band, but she was a really good pennant bearer. If you want to know what that means, you can ask me later. But she got to dress up like a Greek and hold a big pennant and do little tricks with it. Anyway, we enjoyed being in the band a lot. Marching parades, half times, all that thing. And then we started getting interested in, boys, of course. And Katie also joined something very special. She had swam all her life, and she joined the swim team. She was the only girl on the swim team. I think she was the first woman to get a letter on a jacket, and she dove, and she hung out with all the boys. Perfect place. But speaking of crushes, seems she had a crush on a really handsome blonde water polo swimmer guy, and apparently he had one on her too. And so I got to be around and see all that transpire. And I feel so wonderful that my sidekick starting out life, I got to pass along to Matt, and he got to escort Katie through the rest of her life. It was such a blessing. Speaking about being separated once in a while, sometimes Matt would go away, and there would be a few days that Katie could not be with Matt. So we had discovered the Beach Boys, by the way, and we had got out of our quirky stage, and we listened to the Beach Boys incessantly. But we drove around in a car, but we couldn't listen to the music in the car. There were no cassettes or CD players. We just had to sing ourselves. But we loved this one song, and you might recognize it. I'll play a little bit of it, and I'm almost done. It's about a T-bird. Oh, we love that. We love that so much because, of course, Matt was driving a beautiful black T-bird all around town all the time, and that was so you didn't know we were singing that when you were missing. So So in honor of Katie, I'm going to play our duet, Star of the East, which I've mastered. And I'm going to play my part by myself, and then I'm going to play her part. And you'll have to imagine them together. Yeah, thank you. We would trade between the top and the bottom parts. I even have in my book who would play top or bottom, and we had a code, a rating system of our songs, but of course this had 5 stars.
Thank you for taking us back to Katie's childhood, walking out of Flint Ridge. Katie's closest friend during her undergraduate years at Scripps is our next speaker, Merritt, who likely could tell us in a different setting what Katie really was up to at Scripps, but I don't think that's going to take place here. Along those lines, Matt confessed to me just last week that he once picked Merritt up and swung her around kind of jokingly and accidentally broke her ankle. He's figuring the statute of limitations is over on this one, but he is still seeking a little forgiveness from our next speaker. Maybe not.
I think that'll work. Yeah, that works. That's perfect. Well, good evening. For those of you I haven't met, I am Merritt Vail, and it really is an honor to be here this evening to share in this celebration of our wonderful friend Katie's life.
And I have to say that as I've been sitting here listening to all of this, I found myself feeling it's really remarkable to hear how each speaker has brought a different piece of Katie to all of us. And I suddenly was filled with this image in my mind of a quilt and the squares that come together, and as we listen to how they all come together, we wrap ourselves in the warmth of these memories of Katie. So thank you to everybody who's been part of this so far. Sometimes if you are really lucky in life, God brings to you, or the fates brings to you, someone that you feel an instant cosmic connection with. Someone with whom your life intertwines so effortlessly that it's as if you have always been part of them and they have always been part of you, and that this is as it always will be. And I am blessed that Katie was this type of person in my life. As has been alluded to, Katie and I met the first night of freshman orientation at Scripps College. We were dorm mates who became instant, fast friends. And when I started thinking about what I might say tonight, it suddenly struck me, Erin, that we were about the age you are now when I met your wonderful parents. And I just want to say that as you go through your college experience, I hope that you have the same wonderful good fortune that I did to make lifelong friends like your mom and dad have been to me. Because they really are more than friends, it's more like the best kind of family. As I sifted through photographs of those charmed college years earlier in the week, a number of things really struck me instantly. First, it is almost impossible to think of Katie and not think of her wonderful Matt. Always at the center of Katie's universe, Matt and Katie shared a love story that everyone dreams of, but not everyone is fortunate enough to live. We shared many great adventures and unforgettable times. And Matt, I was going to bypass the story that ended with me on crutches. And I think what I will now instead bypass is the story about United States Postal Service communications from En-Route Publications, which rumor has it on occasion included goldfish that no longer swam with the fishes. Second, it was instantly clear to me that Katie was just an amazing, amazing friend. In my case, she really was more like the sister I wasn't lucky enough to have. So Claire Ann, what I hope for you is that you already have, or will soon have in your life, an amazing, wonderful, beautiful friend who will be there to share your secrets and your dreams and your challenges and your hopes, and who will always encourage you to be the very best person you can, just like your mother did for me. Third, if Katie was passionate about it, then her determination was rock solid. I know that many of you who were lucky enough to be her West Coast family and friends and neighbors here in Carpinteria saw this in her dedication to Matt and Erin and Claire Ann. You saw it in the passion that she displayed as she fought for important civic and environmental issues that were important to her. And you saw it in the valiant way that she fought her illness. But I suspect you probably also saw it in some of the funny ways that I had the opportunity to do. Like the time in April, she decided it would be a fine idea for us to drive down to Balboa Island, where her family at the time had a catamaran, which she assured me she was capable of captaining. So she did actually manage to demonstrate to me she had the capacity to prepare the boat and put the boat in the water, and she did actually manage to get us into the middle of Balboa Harbor, where she promptly flipped the catamaran on a day that, if I'm being kind, was maybe 60 degrees. About this time, as we are in the very cold water, unable to turn this boat over, two rather nice-looking young men on the beach started running to the water, witnessing these damsels in distress. They were ripping their shirts off as they went in a very movie-like fashion. They got 1 foot in that water. They jumped back on the beach and they yelled, "We'll call the Harbor Patrol!" Needless to say, that was the last time I was on a sailboat with Katie. There are so many stories that we could share. You all know that she was loving and kind and witty and passionate and brilliant. But she was also endearing for some really little things, like the fact that in spite of her brilliance, Katie could not spell her way out of a paper bag if her life depended on it. Through our college years, I had the opportunity to proofread many of her papers on the Utes of Uteland and other assorted medieval topics. And Erin and Claire Ann and the rest of the younger people in the audience, you know, this was in truly the dark ages before computers and spell check. And I will never forget her one night getting very upset with me because I was in such a state of glee over how atrocious her spelling was. And finally I said, well, Katie, if you don't know how to spell the word, why don't you look it up? And with this amazing mix of indignance and maybe a little bit of childlike innocence, you probably can hear, she looked at me quite seriously and said, how am I supposed to look it up when I don't know how to spell it? She taught me many useless fun facts that stick with me even to this day. I was the Asian Studies major to her Medieval Studies major, so she shared with me from these Latin classes that she had with Lauren interesting things like how to say, that damn friend of yours can't come in Latin. And I was able to reciprocate about how 5 words, all the same sounding to us, but with different tones, could give you the very useful expressions of mother scolds the horse and the horse scolds mother in Chinese. I'm certain that all of us who had the great good fortune of having Katie in our lives feel that the heavenly or cosmic or whatever connection you'd like to assign to it is something that is eternal. I know I do. She and I had dreams of extending the very special friendship we had at Scripps as we moved on from that life to other things, graduate school, jobs, being married and raising children. Sadly, life takes you in different directions sometimes, and I ended up in Seattle, so first 1,000 miles away, and then for, well, we won't say exactly how many decades, 3,500 miles away on the West Coast. But while we were prevented from having the total immersion experience of that we dreamed of in our young adult life, I have to say that we saw far too little of each other. Each and every time we did have a chance to come together, the last time Lauren alluded to in Washington, D.C., it was as though no time had passed and no distance divided us. My aunt reminded me this morning about author C.S. Lewis reflecting that we only experience great grief when we have experienced and been blessed with great joy. I hope that everyone who loved Katie as I did will take some comfort in that. And I, for myself, plan to try to continue focusing on cherishing every priceless memory and on being grateful that Katie was part of my life. Thank you for letting me share some thoughts with you this afternoon.
Beautiful. Before I introduce our next speaker, I would like to digress just a moment to talk about a few of the things that Katie did as a volunteer and fellow activist with me and many others in our community, many of them right here tonight, in educational and environmental issues. Katie was the kind of volunteer you could really count on, whether it was her writing, editing work. Maybe her spelling needed work, but she sure was a good proofreader. Her political strategizing on the Ledbetter, Jordan, and Stein campaign of 1990, helping craft a witty but effective cartoon for a political campaign some years later, recording accurate minutes as secretary of the Carpinteria Valley Association, an association that is 1 year older than the city and been, matter of fact, Roxy Lapidus is here tonight, and her father founded that association with Lois Seidenberg back in 1964, and Katie was proud to do the work there of ensuring that Carpinteria not become just another town in Southern California that loses its charm. She worked running battles of the books at Aliso School. If you want to come up and get, that's right. coordinating our food and beverages at Songfest for the Santa Barbara Middle School each year, each year that Claire Ann and Aaron were there. And even if her kids weren't in Songfest, and I tried my hardest to get Aaron and Claire Ann to go in Songfest, but can't win them all. Helping us, of course, with the unbelievable, challenging effort, but successful effort on the public acquisition efforts of the Carpinteria Bluffs. And it seems so fitting that before heading up those fundraising efforts, she spent at least a dozen years working on the even more challenging political fight that so many of us were involved in, trying to save the special coastal space. And of course that led to electing a new city council, and then helped by the Land Trust of Santa Barbara County and the Citizens for the Carpinteria Bluffs, gifting this property to the city of Carpinteria. And it seems so appropriate that her husband Matt is now the steward, that is as head of the city's Park and Recreation Department, the steward of that property that Katie and the rest of us worked so hard to save. Katie's involvement with the Bluffs didn't end there. It didn't end with this public acquisition. For the past dozen years, she organized the Bluffs Earth Day out on the Bluffs, and it was her intention to bring every public school student in the 3rd grade out on a field trip to the Bluffs. And this involved learning about harbor seals and raptors, Chumash culture, native plants, a little of the history of what it took this community to save the Bluffs, a little bit of the values of giving back to the community. And on these field trips, they might paint with some of the Oak Group painters, some of Arturo's colleagues like Whitney Abbott and Kai Abbott. They might also gather on a group of rocks with an amazing panoramic view of the Bluffs, and learn with their pencils and papers, learn how to write haikus with her longtime friend and fellow activist Arturo Teo. And that's who we will now hear from, Arturo Teo.
Good evening. My name is Arturo Teo. I live at 180 Ocean View. Oh no, wait a minute. That's how I used to start all my meetings long ago, 30 years ago almost. Not quite. Realizing that I touched a very small part of Katie's life, but in a way it was a huge part. Not one person saved the Bluffs. Many people, the whole community in fact, were involved in that. But the early fight for the Bluffs, it was a small number of people. And it was a tough fight. We all feel like veterans of some campaign. And the thing about Katie, and the thing about those times, is that, to be effective in that campaign, you really had to put your whole heart and soul into it, your whole commitment. You had to have courage. You had to have constant inspiration, because the thing about inspiration is that you tend to lose it, and you have to re-inspire and re-inspire and re-inspire. I was thinking of Katie always having the big picture and always reminding us, doing little diagrams about the Bluffs, of course, the Carpinteria Marsh, the channel, the islands beyond, the back country. Always saying, we needed the access, which luckily now we are about to finish the access to the Franklin Trail and the back country. She always had that in mind as the bigger picture of what it is worth preserving here in Carpinteria. It's our legacy, it's our heritage, is what we can leave for other generations. The thing about her is that, at those times there was always public comments, and you had to share your vision. You really had to enroll the whole community into a new vision of what Carpinteria needs to remain as. It was tough at the time, really. Development was very close to spoiling the bluffs. And she always managed to inspire us that she would bring some comments from some 12th century thinker, you know, and then in our private times, in our meetings, and in our great dessert feasts at the Allen's house, she would be very irreverent and very funny, and she would really almost channel Dorothy Parker with some of her comments. And some of that risque stuff was really good to get you motivated and going for the next time. I did have the pleasure to help out in the haiku component of the Earth Day at the Bluffs, and on the way here from the car I decided to do a little haiku for this evening, and I hope that you will do the last line with me, repeated after I say it. It goes like this. This August evening by the sea, moist-eyed, we say, Katie, we love you. Katie, we love you. I'm going to do a song that I wrote. I wrote it for my mentor, Ray Strong. He passed away. But I've been singing it thinking of Katie. I used to see her recently when I'd walk my little dog Claire. I have a daughter named Claire too. Clarita. And Clarita is part Maltese and part Shih Tzu. And she's a strong, intelligent woman. And her 9 pounds can totally manage my 220 pounds. No problem. Katie used to laugh at me because I had this retractable 25-foot leashes, and if Clarita didn't want to follow me, she'd plop down. And there's no way that I could move her. But one time, she plopped down when I was still walking, and she pulled this handle from my hand, and it went sailing. It scared the heck out of her. So from then on, I found out that if I wanted her to move, I just needed to go down like this and pretend I was going to drop that thing. And then she'd move a little bit and watch me, and then if I got up again, then she'd flop down. So Katie watched this and just laughed and laughed. And that's my memory of the latest memory I have of her, just laughing at me and Clarita. Anyways, so here's Loss. Loss has a taste, it's salty, and it's bitter, and loss has a weight. And it sits right here in my chest. It sits right here in my chest. And loss has a color. It's blue. Like the ocean, blue like the sky, blue like the distant. Look in your eye on the day, the day you said goodbye. Loss has a shape and it's round. It's round. It's round like the moon. Round like the sun. It's round like being around you was fun till the day you said goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. The day you said goodbye. Loss is an absence that fills up my heart. It fills up my heart. It's present in my heart. Lost. Thank you.
I just wanted to add, if you want to come out in a couple of months and help Arturo write some haikus for our third graders, or help Andrea here teach the kids about native plants. We've moved the Earth Day to the fall, and I think we're planning it on October 10th. I'm hoping that we can rename it for Katie. We're going to continue doing this day as long as we're around here, and we've heard many powerful stories of some students at that age that have been turned around by that experience of going to the Bluffs. So you can talk to me afterwards if you're interested, or check out our carpinteriabluffs.org web page. Along with her annual Earth Day project, another of Katie's many volunteer jobs over the years she took on with her customary thoroughness and gusto was helping to edit a weekly email newsletter from the Santa Barbara Middle School called The Scoop. And each week that Katie sent out an email soliciting news from the faculty and the staff and parents, she would include an interesting phrase such as nick of time or movable feast, along with a brief, sometimes less brief, discourse on the origins of such a phrase. And over the course of several years, Katie's weekly citations covered a long list of authors and works: Mark Twain, Oscar Wilde, Hemingway, John Chiardi, John Irving, Lord Byron, Bosworth, Coleridge, Ben Jonson, Lewis Carroll, of course Shakespeare and Chaucer. I went through my old emails and started noting all of the people that she cited. I couldn't find Beowulf. I did look. She might mention Ethelbert, King of Kent from the 17th century, or the illuminated manuscript of the Fauver Master. Her references went on and on, so it's no wonder that Katie got on so mightily with the next person here tonight that wanted to say something about Katie, and that's Colby Klein, who just retired from many years as an excellent service to the Santa Barbara Middle School as their librarian. Colby's asked me to read this. Can you stand up so people can at least see you? Thank you. Colby became really close to Katie, and it's just too hard for her to read this, and I'm honored to read it for you. Katie was one of the strongest, smartest, funniest people I have ever known. Katie knew stuff: music, art, Latin, Old English, literature, baseball, gardening, cooking, the 100 best books of young adult literature, how tankless water heater should be plumbed, the order of the feathers the order of the feathers on the wing of a raptor, and she was always eager to share a web page or a book or 3 from her library so that you could know that stuff too. Katie volunteered in the library at Santa Barbara Middle School for 8 years, during which we became close friends and reading buddies. She would arrive at about 8:15 with a large cup of tea, treats for various dogs on campus, and usually a book she had either reviewed for content for the library or one she wanted to share with me. She would put the library in order, write and edit the scoop, serve in the deli at break and lunch, then go walk for 5 miles, getting back in time to convey a car full of kids back home, all with a smile and a joke. I am still working my way through the latest book she gave me, The World History of Salt. I know she is out there somewhere, egging me on. That's beautiful, Colby. Here's another short piece, typical of Katie's weekly on treaties for the scoop that I just mentioned. Send me a baker's dozen, more or less, of stories for the scoop. Things are happening fast and furious here at SBMS, so let's get the word out. From a phrase a week, baker's dozen is yet another common saying with its roots in the Middle Ages. Perhaps the study of earlier times and other cultures is a really good idea, just a thought, unquote. And in keeping with this interest in ancient cultures expressed by Katie, I can't think of a more appropriate person to speak about her than Dominique Smith, longtime cultural studies teacher at Santa Barbara Middle School, also fairly recently retired and having the time of her life, I think.
It's an honor and a privilege to join the other speakers today. And I want to thank you, Matt and Aaron and Claire-Anne and Ted also for asking me to do it. Katie, as you all know, poured her strength and her passion into many different causes important to her, and therefore she touched many lives in different ways and was a different person to each of us. So in this celebration of her life, I just want to say a few words about the connection that she and I shared over a number of years through SBMS. Memories that makes me smile despite the sorrow that we all share. As a teacher there, I first got to know Katie as a parent. First when Aaron was in my class and then later Claire-Anne. It was immediately obvious that she loved her children, was entirely supportive and ready to help them in any way possible, but at the same time that she expected the best effort from them and didn't hesitate to get on their case if they didn't perform as she knew they could, sometimes much to their dismay. And for a teacher, what a dream parent she was. Katie and I shared a love of mythology, stories, books, history, and as we got to know each other better, we would often spend time in the library over a cup of coffee or tea, discussing Greek myths, Roman gods, world religions, the Middle Ages, France. Katie was knowledgeable and passionate about many of these topics, and it was a joy to share ideas and beliefs with her, as well as learn from her. An example which sticks in my mind is when once I showed her this object coming from my grandfather's time in the trenches during World War I, and she got so interested that she ended up doing a lot of research about it and sharing with me what she had found out and learned about the lives of soldiers at that time. That was typical Katie. She and I also shared a love for words, their origin, their evolution, their meanings, their uses. When Katie was editor of SBMS newsletter, The Scoop, she created a section on words and expressions, which Ted mentioned just before. And it was always the first and sometimes the only part that I read and always thoroughly enjoyed. If a certain word or expression eluded me or puzzled me, I would email her and wait for her enlightening response. Sharing her knowledge was always done by Katie with joy, a sense of fun, and a lot of humor, and her enthusiasm was contagious. I would have loved to have her as a teacher. I would like to conclude by reading the translation of a poem by the French writer Charles Péguy, which I read at my mother's memorial. I believe Katie would approve of it, and in fact, I think I can see her smiling. It is called Prayer by Charles Péguy. Death is nothing. I've only moved to the room next door. I'm still myself as you are you. What we were for one another, we still are. Call me by the name you always called me. Talk to me like you always did. Do not use a different voice. Do not look solemn and sad. Continue to laugh at what made us laugh together. Pray, smile, think of me. Pray for me. Let my name be mentioned like it always was, without giving it more importance, without sadness. Life means everything it always meant. It is what it has always been. The thread hasn't been severed. Why should I be out of your thoughts simply because I'm out of your sight? I'm waiting for you. I'm simply on the other side of the path. You see, all is well. Thank you.
From the guitar one.
I'm not going to play it just yet. Can you help me get the strap on? I'm going to say some things. But can you help me with the strap? Yeah. I am very grateful for having had Katie Roberts as a good friend and also as a fellow activist and conspirator. As mentioned earlier, she was a vital and essential part of so many of the critical environmental, political, and educational causes that I worked on and many others at this gathering. She was organized. Here's an example of a short to-do list sent to me from Katie that I recently ran across in my looking at the old emails. This is what she expected me to do on one Earth Day. 1, be there between 7:30 and 7:45. 2, bring your folding table. 3, bring your guitar and harmonicas. Well, I got those here tonight, Katie. 4, maybe write a couple of Bluffs haikus to share. 5, bring your camera. 6, I like my tea whole leaf. See, I was bringing the coffee. I like my tea whole leaf, weak and milky, my toast medium well done with thick cut orange Seville marmalade, and the yogurt in my fresh berry parfait should be Greek. Of course, I didn't get any of those things for her, but the thought that counts. And number 8, Matt's order to follow. Katie would do it, get it done, get the job done, do it with wit, but get the details right. You could count on her, in fact, to help you find even that missing Oxford comma in your prose. She had an almost photographic memory recall of important obscure historical dates and events with phenomenal staggering as phenomenal and staggering as was her ability to identify flowers that you might encounter. Less known perhaps to some of you was her love for Dodger baseball and all things Vin Scully. A passion I believe began with her father, but I'm not sure on that. She knew all about Sandy Koufax's brief stay here in Carpinteria. Told me once about that. Maybe she talked to you about that. Katie's recall of family genealogy was also impressive, even fictional ones. For example, she knew more about the characters in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, that movie, than I did, and I worked on that movie. Katie had an extraordinary knowledge of vocabulary, as others have spoken about, and a keen interest in etymology. Her choice of words was precise and usually proper. However, on occasion, she could also swear as saltily as any sailor or roustabout. Some of us have witnessed that. In that regard, Katie and I shared a certain euphemism. I'm not quite sure, maybe Aaron and Claire Ann can brief me afterwards, but the euphemism is buckethead. And in special circumstances, when it was necessary to mask what we really wanted to say, Katie and I and others that were in on this phrase might resort to saying buckethead instead of what we really intended. Let's just say that buckethead rhymes with a certain two-syllable expletive ending in head and beginning with the Sesame Street letter of F. No one was ever the wiser when they heard us casually refer to the latest local scandal as a buckethead. But wait, now I hear Katie saying something to me. She's saying, "Roads you've gone on too long, you buckethead, so step back and let your wife sing her song." So that's what we would like to do. I will step back, or at least step to the side here. Katie, Joni and I are so grateful for having had you in our lives, and we're grateful for having Matt, Aaron, and Claire Ann in our lives. You have been a meteor moving fast across our many skies, blazing bright as a solar flare, and I like to think still lighting our way.
This is for Katie, who lived her life with such grace.
I have to take a minute. I've gotten so dry that I'm not. Our next to last speaker, or as Katie would say, our penultimate speaker, will be Barbara. Barbara is another of Katie's close friends who, like Francine and Greg Graves, has also been at Katie's side through all that Katie's been facing these past few years. Barbara and Katie met when Barbara's twins and Aaron were in Sonny Crandall's toddler group at Girls Inc. And just to keep the Scripps College theme going, Barbara's daughter Hannah, who's here tonight, now goes to Scripps. Barbara.
Well, if I were you, I'd be hoping I'm funny or fast, because the night is growing long, but I'm neither. But I did time this to 8 minutes, so I hope I can bring it in shortly. 18 years ago, my friendship with Katie had an inauspicious beginning. I was at the receiving end of a correction. A history lesson I had aired made a wrong inference based on wrong history, and while Katie excavated and shared 2 juice boxes, diaper wipes, sunscreen, cheese sticks, and a roll of paper towels from the warehouse, also known as the back of her van, she corrected me. She set me right. And with that, I began to get to know Katie. I found her perched, as she was, on the ledge of an orchard, fruitful and abundant in her ideas and passions, shoveling in wit and guile as she cultivated support and harvested funds, planning and plotting for the future with so many of you here today, so that a patch of those beautiful bluffs would be put right into the column of unencumbered, everlasting, free and open to all, pleasing that feisty democratic heart of hers. Katie's eye seemed always to be on the long game, the long story, able to work tirelessly. I think knowing from the sweat on Matt's brow, the years and the labor it takes till an orchard bears its fruit. About 8 years ago, I got to know Katie more deeply, not in Carpinteria, but in hospitals. Interrupted as she was, in the middle of a trip, in the middle of the state, in the middle of her life, from Gilroy to LA, from one Cedars Tower to the next, in ICUs and waiting rooms, with her tap root deeply secured in that orchard, she barked back at every single interruption. With IVs and injections, with stitches and scars and stents and staples, with both a yielding to what was necessary and a refusal to let it harm, alter, or delay anyone else's life. A refusal to let it subdue her. And so it seemed to me to go like this. Let's see. Wilting and complex surgery that rearranges one's basic anatomy on a Tuesday? Write the school newsletter on Thursday? Done. Install a PICC line, a port, a drain or two while living only on IV nutrition? Strategize with Aaron about his freshman year schedule or his water polo practice, or plan Claire Ann's birthday party or her first school bike trip, or dream up Matt's Christmas present, or follow through on a board project? And did I mention walking miles and miles each day without wavering or weakening? Done. Remembering in stunning fullness and detail the rhythms and problems and joys of your lives. When the rhythm of her life was measured in beeps on a monitor or blips on one of those many screens surrounding her bedside, 2 freeways away from you. A circumstance that would entitle her to utter and complete self-preoccupation. But it never, ever, ever did. Beautiful and radiant and irreverent Katie, indomitable stamina and stubbornness every step of the way, raging against the dying of the light, setting it as right and as long as she possibly could, keeping that long night beyond the bay, not allowing it near the orchard until there were more birthdays, more milestones, more of Claire Ann, and more of Aaron, and more of Matt, and more of all of us. Thank you, dear Katie, for how much you did to hold out, to keep yourself here for so long. And then beginning this past April, I got to know Katie as she faced her death. In our pajamas, 6th floor, North Tower, middle of the night. Claire Ann and Aaron, your mother knew she was helpless to prevent or reverse or repair the pain that her death would cause you. Your mother knew she would not be able to comfort you or your father. And that was, I think, perhaps a grief greater than losing her own life. But some comfort did come to her on that score, and that comfort is here today. Your aunts, uncles, cousins, your parents' friends, your friends, this extraordinary community. She knew she was leaving you in their arms, and that soothed her deeply. Matt, you and Katie nurtured a love that was deeply devoted, epic in its youthful beginnings, unflinching, undying, and undimmed. There is a poet who said a year after he lost his son that he did not know that the work of mourning was like carrying a bag of cement up a mountain at night, finding there's no mountaintop, seemingly no upward path. But that altered for him, as it did for others, and as it will for you. Look closely, he said, and you will see almost everyone carrying bags of cement on their shoulders. I say this not to diminish your pain or the singularity of your loss, but to say in the most essential way, you are not alone. There are more people here than we can count, more people here than you ordered chairs for. This valley knew Katie. This valley knows you. But these people here with you today are the cool breezes in this beautiful life you and Katie created together. Breezes to cool your brow, to refresh you, to sustain you. May the three of you know solace and comfort in the companionship of each other, in the Roberts family and all your friends, and in the memory of a woman who loved you with all she had. And to this I say, amen. And good night, Katie.
That was beautiful. Our last person to say a few words tonight, another good friend of Katie's. First met Katie at the Lou Grant Parent-Child Workshop. Linda shares Katie's passion for classical music, literature, and all things Louise Penny. Linda's also helped immensely with putting on this evening's gathering, especially with the food and beverages. Linda?
I'm going to try to do this. I have wonderful memories of talking with Katie about our favorite pieces of music and going to as many live performances as we could. We'd always planned, even from our early days at Lou Grant, to create some sort of music club where we and other interested parties could get together, listen to a particular piece, and discuss its merits. But then we would just start yakking away on what we were listening to and forget to invite anyone else. Well, I guess our music club inaugural meeting has finally arrived, and you are all now official members. One of Katie's favorite arias was O mio babbino caro, composed by Puccini for the opera Gianni Schicchi. We are so privileged to have Barbara Coventry on violin and Chris Judge on guitar to perform this piece for us today. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. Please now join Matt and Claire-Ann and Aaron and the whole family and tell some more stories about this amazing woman we knew, this amazing friend, family member, Katie Roberts. And one final, take it away, Todd.
Well, we've had all the introductions, we've had all the pomp and circumstance, we've had all the fuss and feathers, but it's time for Dodger baseball!
Play ball!